Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Philosopher's Stone, brought to you by the Bored Uplander Club. Today, we're going to have a hearty chat with Dak from the Upland Racing League, URL, and from his own side project within that space, the UMC. Let's get started and pick at this big brain. So okay. So it was a game that you didn't want to lose money on, and that's funny that you started off like that because for a while now I stopped calling it a game, more like a platform with gamification. And let me give you context on that, and then I'll ask you what you think about it. Is in my opinion the amplification, the more pins I think we can add to the name of what Upland is, I think in the short term it can help because it gives people a little bit more context about what they're going to do or what they can do there. So I've come to call it a Web3 a Web3 marketplace with gamification. Now, there are three labels that I put on there because I do want people to understand, or at least begin the conversation about what is Web3, right? They know what marketplace is. We can sell goods, and then gamification. A lot of that is starting to be now mass adopted as part of our verbiage when it comes to kind of like our everyday life. Our finances have become gamification with the popularity of like a Robinhood and all these investment apps. Our schools are slowly becoming more gamified. And it's been a slow process. I did a small stint teaching computer science at my parochial alma mater school. Shout out Chapel, CCS in the house. I saw, even then I understood, this is 2004-ish, that we were up against, in the educational system, games, the video games. These are the kids are learning decent skills, hand coordination mechanics, based on a video game. The old world form of teaching needed to adjust. Now we see a lot more, points, stickers, anything where kids can be able to basically learn to earn is the concept there. And so it's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting you bring that up because I worked with the certification industry quite a bit. And one of the things that we were talking about is how certification management has changed and about creating micro-credentials and things like that and it was being led by how people are learning. And one of those elements of how people are learning is some of this gamification elements, right? And the idea of being able to do gamification for achievements and micro awards and so forth. And instead of doing long lessons, my kids are in school and you see it too, probably, they have those little bots and they have the little where it's games and you earn points so you could get a unicorn or something, right? Yeah. And so the way everyone is learning, the way people are engaging in leaderboards and badges and all of these things has really kind of driven a lot of how we learn. And so, yes, learning is becoming fun, but are we really learning when all we're doing is fun? An example of that is my daughter came in and was very proud. I'm learning 7 languages. I'm like, how are you learning 7 languages? Oh, I'm on Duolingo and I'm learning Italian, Spanish, French. I'm like, what? And so I started talking to her in Spanish. And she's like, what are you saying? I'm like, I thought you said you're learning Spanish. She's going through the things, trying to just get to the end of each of those lessons, games. But is she really learning? So anyway, different conversation.
It's actually the same conversation. Because when we talk about the gamification of our everyday lives, here I said it's a marketplace with gamification. So our everyday life activity would be going places to shop and get things that we need for our everyday living. And in this case, it's very, let's say, micro deployed for education. Now, I actually got my girls into Duolingo also. I got into it because we were heading to Italy and I needed to learn quick conversational Italian. I found it to be a little easier because I do speak Spanish, and there was a lot of the tongue aspect of the vocabulary, the pronunciation, the phonetics of it that I can handle. Right. My girls now
It's
are
not the
taking.
same.
It is not the
I
same.
got in trouble with my Italian. I took Italian in college, and I
Yeah.
thought it would be easy because of my Spanish, but I kept confusing Spanish and Italian, and my Italian teacher got very mad.
Now I understand that because I took Spanish for Spanish speakers and failed for 3 years. I think I got 1D. So getting the tenses down and memorizing Lorca and Marquez and all of that was a little more than I think I could handle at the time. But the funny thing that saved me was the fact that people heard the Spanish accent in me and actually began speaking Spanish to me instead. Because I guess it's similar to maybe how visitors do it here, right? They hear other languages, but they also try to speak English because that's kind of like the rolling thing. I'm assuming because the proximity to Spain and maybe a lot of Spanish tourists, it's a common thing to be able to run into a Spanish speaker, and so they rolled with it. And I was able to get away with some Duolingo Italian that allowed me to say that I'm, Spanish, and that I needed a certain thing,
Yeah.
right?
And I think you have some great labels on Upland. Gamification, Web3, marketplace. I am not going to say that those are wrong in any way, shape, or form. I think that it does serve a lot of that. But as I said earlier, I found Upland because I wanted to find a game that doesn't lose me money.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, and I know there's been a lot of conversation in the Discord servers about this and everything. Is Upland an investment vehicle or not? Blah, blah, blah.
Correct.
Upland itself is a game.
Mm-hmm.
It is a game on Web3, and as such acts as a layer 1 platform or system. The community and Upland have both come to the realization that as a layer 1, you can actually do more than just play a real estate game.
Yeah.
And I think that from that perspective, yes, Upland is more of a marketplace. It is more of a platform. It is more of a Web3 kind of project, right? And in Web3, everything's a project, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's great in that regard. But to me, I still, and the reason I say this is when I talk to people about Upland, when I talk to people about NFTs have a bad rap. And I know and this has been discussed in other ones. And I think one of the things we came up with is just talk about digital ownership, right? Instead of calling it an NFT, to say it's digital ownership. And we were talking about games and how gamers have given NFTs, like they don't like it. X1 was talking about it in his show, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, digital ownership, that's actually all that an NFT is. But even more importantly, it's the business rules and the contracts, the smart contracts associated with the blockchain and so forth, right? And so from my perspective, I still, when I start talking about all this to normal people who are not into it, and all they've heard about is how NFTs are scams and everything else, they lose, they're like, yeah, whatever. I tell them I'm playing a game where I can actually own the digital assets and sell those digital assets. Well, then that makes a little more sense, because then it's just, it's like Magic the Gathering, but online, right? And even MTGO, you kind of own the cards and you can sell the cards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really sell them, but you can, get credit and value for them. And so the concept of a game with a digital asset that is owned is easy to understand. Trying to explain layer 1 and how you can actually build off of that and use it as a platform to create your own business process and it's lost on a lot of folks right now.
Oh no, yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree, and that's a great transition into the URL with the gamification aspect, and you're bringing gamification to Upland. What bore that idea? Like, where did it come from?
So one of the things I learned from I joined Upland September 5th, 2021.
Hmm.
So I'm a little more than a year in. And I quickly found out that I was horrible at buying and flipping properties. I don't do that part of the game well at all.
Okay.
And so I started looking for other things, and I found UCC, and I was just giving some ideas of how, of what I would do to kind of help build the community, help create retention, create engagement, and so forth. And they're like, hey, you should be on the board on the team. And so I ended up joining them.
Cool.
And I quickly realized that in the metaverse, in these types of environments, in these discords, you can actually apply business applications, real world business kind of models. And the impact and the ramifications and results are much faster, much more accelerated than in the real world. And so you have ups and downs much faster. You have hits and misses much faster. But you can also test a lot of ideas. You can kind of identify how things might work. And so I really started to see this community and social economy model build out through the work we were doing with UCC.
Yeah.
Then in March, I had a meeting with Martin. We were talking about UCC and how the UDN could help kind of like what we might be able to do with containers and some of the other stuff. And when I was talking to him, he just off the cuff kind of mentioned something about, and the attributes on cars, you'll be able to, and I'm like, wait, attributes on cars? He's like, oh yeah, we have that. I'm like, you already have that? He's like, yeah, a lot of people I don't think realize how far along our racing and vehicles and everything else is done. So just from like the conversation, and it wasn't like a deep conversation, and he didn't give me any like secrets or anything like that. But it was just that, he was saying, where they were headed and what they were doing and everything. And I realized they were a lot further along than most of the community understood. Then I was talking to Malice Sky and JR Wheels and a couple of other folks, and they were telling me about how much UPEX they had banked for vehicles and for racing. And then they told me about how much USD they were planning on spending on vehicles and racing and everything. And I realized, one, get to market fast. Two, build it and they will come.
Oh yeah.
And then three, make it about the community, right? And so when we created URL, I started it, and Elijah, you, JR Wheels, Malice Sky, like there was like 8-9 of us that kind of said, okay, yeah, let's try it out and let's jump into it. Other folks were like, you guys are crazy. Racing is not even coming out. What are you guys doing? What are you talking about? And I tried to tell them.
Oh man, yes.
And I'm like, I'm telling you, I've had conversations. It's further along than I think people realize. Get into it now.
Oh, the fudders. Oh, those fudders.
And so that's how it, URL kind of came about. It was, what I learned from working with UCC, understanding this community economic model, and the power of the community economic model in terms of the game impact. And so that's what I wanted to create with URL, and that's what we ended up doing.
It's organized really nicely. If you are watching this and have not been able to check out the URL server, check it out. The application process for tracks is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I liked it. But at the same time, it does put you in that corner. Yeah, that this is a business. Like you're running a meta venture without it being an official meta venture, because you're having to come up with a marketing campaign, business campaign. We
call it a Metacorp.
Metacorp. There you go. Yeah,
so
that's a
Metacorp is outside of Upland, and a meta venture is inside of Upland.
There you go. That's perfect description. And it has been a fun process. And I have to give you big kudos on that, because it's really helped me advance the concept of the Bored Uplander Club as a community lifestyle hub for creatives. They saw the same potential with racing as I did, and technically that's what allows me to, in the sense that they pay for a founder's membership to get this kind of advanced access, is that we're all of that same creative mind set that allows us to advance everybody's vision.
Well, and that was what was so interesting about URL. When I started it, I said I wanted to create a marketplace where people who understood and wanted to get in on racing and racing economic model in Upland had a place to come. And so the idea wasn't that we were going to be the only league, or that we were going to have the only racing teams, or that we were going to have the only anything. It was that we wanted people to create a lot of other little things and bring it all to a central location where it's like the marketplace, right? So, the idea of, we have vendors, we have promoters, we have sponsors, we have drivers, we have team principals, we have race commissioners, right? And giving roles and giving all of that to everyone. And when race commissioners get their channels, they can do whatever they want with it. I don't limit what race commissioners can do in their channels. We did have to limit the tagging everyone because we were pinging way too much, and people were like, But that was I think the biggest thing is that a lot of folks are finding what they like about racing and Upland, and how they might want to connect and what they might want to do. And we've seen some very creative folks kind of come in. And the ranking board were volunteers, and then we have the race commissioners. And the way we structured it is almost very much like a DAO, where the ranking board comes up with the resolutions. And then those resolutions are sent to the race commissioners or the team principals for them to ratify and approve.
Yeah, it's a great structure. I appreciate the process, like I said, because of the fact that I was able to advance a lot of my marketing campaigns, certain concepts about my ticketing system, to be able to do that. And also, like you said, the creative aspect of coming up with ways to utilize the cars right now as we have them. We do know that it's on the alpha stage, so it's pretty basic, user friendly interface. We could kangaroo off of that idea and say, like, expanding the URL and not just the URL, but all Uplander generated content in different spaces, social media, TV in the case of YouTube. What do you see as the future of that? Like, how does the metaverse promote itself?